Hi, this is the History of Israel podcast, an Each My Own Beat podcast. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we'll be discussing the history of Israel. This is not a podcast to say which side is right, which side is wrong. It's not a podcast to talk about the war which is happening in Palestine. It's just simply the history of Israel.
Welcome back to the History of Israel podcast, episode 17. The Hasmonean Vassal State from 140 to 110 BCE. After Simon was assassinated and replaced by his son John Hyrcanus, Antiochus VII had led a large army into Judea, forcing Hyrcanus to surrender as a vassal ruler in Jerusalem after a 2-year siege. However, following Antiochus' death in the Seleucid-Parthian Wars in 129 BCE, the Seleucids were soon too weak to pursue an active policy against Syria. Hyrcanus was relieved of his burden, establishing the now de facto independent Hasmonean state of Judea, minting coins for the first time and doubling the state's territory. The Hasmonean period from 110 to 63 BCE. Around 110 BCE, Hyrcanus launched an invasion of Transjordan. His army laid siege to the city of Medeba and took it after a 6-month siege. After his victory, he turned north and invaded Samaria, which was long separated Judea from Jewish settlements in Galilee. Shechem was reduced to a village, and the Samaritan temple of Mount Gerizim was destroyed. Archaeological evidence places these events between 111 and 110 BCE. Hyrcanus also launched a military campaign in Idumea, capturing Marissa and Adora. The Idumeans were first to convert to Judaism by threat of exile or death, depending on the source. Following the death of Hyrcanus, his son Aristobulus assumed the title of king for the first time and combined it with the office of high priest. People were now more open to the Hellenistic influences that were demonized under un-Jewish during the war. The Hasmonean kingship bore clear Hellenistic monarchy traits, but combined with these theoretical elements, Aristobulus conquered and annexed Galilee. Galilee, which had previously been sparsely inhabited, mostly by pagan populations, but also Jewish communities, experienced an influx of Jewish settlement following these conquests. Josephus writes that he had also subjugated and Judaized Etruria, but this claim is not supported by archaeological evidence. Alexander Jannaeus waged a series of expansionist wars, primarily against the Hellenistic cities surrounding Judea. Unlike his predecessors, who were focused on the concentration of Jewish population in one country, his military efforts were motivated by a desire to control key economic points such as the ports and trade routes. On the same time, he carried on the predecessor's conversion policy and destroyed Pella because its inhabitants refused to convert. During his reign, the Hasmonean kingdom expanded to its greatest extent, now including a coastal plain, the northern Negev, and western parts of Transjordan. Jannaeus' dual role as king and high priest, his inclination towards the Sedekahs, the high costs of the war as both money and lives threatened the governmental balance and sparked the opposition to his rule, resulting in the Judean Civil War, which Jannaeus brutally suppressed. Salome Alexandria, Jannaeus' widow, ascended to power following her husband's death. Under her rule, the priesthood was separated from the other powers of government for the first time since the rise of the Hasmoneans. Salome appointed her son Hyrcanus II, a high priest, and his brother Aristobulus II as army commander, and pursued a moderate, mostly defensive policy that included the formation of large and a deterring army. Her 9-year reign is described as one of the one of peace and economic prosperity, during which the country recovered from wars. The queen clearly supported the Pharisees, even allowing them to persecute and punish the Sadducees. Her rule has a distinctive Hellenistic flavor, and there was no tradition of female rule in Judea. Hasmonean kingdoms attempted to revive the Judea described in the Bible, a Jewish monarchy ruled by Jerusalem and including all the territories once ruled by David and Solomon. In order to carry out this project, the Hasmoneans forcibly converted their neighbor nations to Judaism. Some scholars argue that the Hasmonean dynasty institutionalized the final Jewish biblical canon.
This has been the History of Israel podcast. Check back every Wednesday for new episodes. We're available on Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. We also have each episode streaming on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. We're available on eattomyownbeat.com as well as the History of Israel podcast on Facebook.